All righty. Good evening, everybody. We have a pretty good show tonight, I think. We're going to focus on a couple of different things here. So we'll talk about the game, of course, but I'm also going to give a little bit of a monologue and have some stats from the excellent 5-on-5 performance that the Ehlers Aho Svechnikov line has had. So I want to make something abundantly clear. Those of you who have followed me since the beginning know that one of the things I have almost always said from the beginning is put Svechnikov on the right wing. The results are coming now, thanks to that. Please leave him there. Rod, please, I am begging you. I know that Aho and Jarvis have that great chemistry, which is awesome. I need to get this thing turned on because there we go. I know that Aho and Jarvis have that great chemistry and everything like that, but you can't upset the balance of that top line right now. It's way too good. Aho and Jarvis will still play together on the penalty kill and on the power play especially. I know that is great. In the event that you have to go back to it, you can. But please do not break up that top line. It is way too good. And I'm going to talk about that near the end of the show, why I'm so adamant about him keeping that line together. This is still turned up a little bit too high. Excuse me. There we go. That's better. All right. Now, we'll go ahead and get into stuff here, but we will answer some comments first. Timmy, what's up, dude? Let's go, Canes. Good to see you, pal. Grilling some duck tonight. Oh, dude, so funny story. I hadn't had duck, like, outside of a restaurant, like, ever. And my girlfriend actually made it for my birthday. No, it wasn't for my birthday. It was for Christmas. And it was really damn good. I hadn't had, she grilled it on the Traeger while I was up here, like, just chilling out and everything like that. It was really good. So, yeah, I can understand why Aho likes to eat duck so much. Like, it's good stuff. It really is. And I need to get my beard trimmed soon. I'm starting to look like a damn Taliban shadow governor. Ehlers has been playing insane with and without the puck. I agree. 1 second, please. Yeah, we're going to talk about that line a ton. Like, the majority of the show, I think, or the largest amount of time that I'm going to allocate to a particular topic is probably going to be that line. I've got some stuff that I made for it. That's why I was a little bit later getting the show started, was I actually made a special slide about that line because I'm going to talk about them a bunch. Some idiot came in here and said, pull, believe, and focus. Man, fuck off, dude. Ethan, what's up, buddy? Yo, what's good, man? I am in excellent spirits right now because I really like the direction the team is going in. I'm very, very happy with it. Tyler Bjorkman says, in a perfect world, what's your Robert Thomas trade look like? That's a tough one. I don't think it's going to happen. I hope for it. I really do. He's not the only option out there, but in my opinion, he is the best option. At a minimum, you're looking at Kokoniemi, probably an A prospect such as Nadeau or Serrato. Definitely a couple of picks, something like that. Robert Thomas is that good of a player. Robert Thomas is essentially a right-handed Aho with a little bit more offense, and that would help this team immensely. And then not to mention, it's like if you build a second line with him and Jarvis and say, like, one of the things I talked about was maybe going to get Kiefer Sherwood. Now, if the Canes go and get Kiefer Sherwood, do not worry about extending him. Get him strictly as a rental. But you have to do something this season because as it stands right now, I'm much happier with the team than I have been as of late. It's still a bit of a paper dragon. And you got to add something to this team for that to not be the case. So, all right, let's get into the show here. All right. Hurricanes versus Ducks, the very first Landfall hour that I've been able to conduct here in the year of our Lord 2026. It is the second of two meetings between the Hurricanes and the Ducks. Of course, Carolina won the first one on the 16th of October during the State Fair road trip 4-1. Overall record, Carolina is 26-14-3. They are 14-8-1 at home, and they are 4-5-1 in their last 10 games, kind of starting to come out of that skid that they were in. Until they're back in the 7 column all the way there on the left, a skid is still going on. 7 out of 10 games is what you want to win at a minimum. But that's when I consider the team is doing well. If it's 7-3-0 or 7-2-1, something along those lines in their last 10. Either way, 7 wins. Get one tonight, and you're getting that much closer back to getting that column where it needs to be. Anaheim struggling a bit as of late. 21-19-3 overall. 9-11-2 on the road, and in their last 10 games, they are 1-7-2. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things in regards to their last 10 games. They have lost 3 straight in regulation. but they are still just outside of a wild card spot. So they're going to fight tonight. They're going to go for it. They've had one win in their last 10, as stated up there, and that was against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And in their last 7 losses, they've only had 1 overtime loss. So they're really struggling right now. So this, even though they're in the spot that they're in and they're a little bit better of a team than they were last year, you're still looking at what's a bit of a trap game here. Going in to look at the numbers, Carolina is 147 goals for, 131 against for a plus 16. Anaheim is at a negative 13 goal differential with 145 for and 158 against. Goals for per game, they're kind of close here, 3.33 to 3.28. That's a little bit more helpful for Carolina. They typically don't need to score a whole lot to win. Goals against per game, as stated here, Carolina is sitting evenly at 3. Anaheim is sitting at 3.67. So this is a team that can, as far as Anaheim goes, that does give up a lot of goals. Power play percentage getting to where it needs to be for the Hurricanes. Now, this is on the entire season here that it's 19.7. In the last 6 to 7 games or so, God damn it. The power play has been excellent, and we need to keep it that way. But so far, so good there. Penalty kill, 78.5%. Hurricanes are really feeling it without Slavin. A few games after he's back regularly, I think it's going to take an uptick. Hopefully, it can end the season around 85% and then maintain about 82 to 83% in the playoffs. That's about what you want to look for. Face-offs, again, Carolina has crept up a little bit to 49.6. And then for the Ducks, 76.6 on the penalty kill and a 46.9 face-off percentage. Now, going into some of the news here, these are the lines that we have seen lately. Ehlers, Aho, Svechnikov, Hall, Stankov, and Blake, Martinook, Stahl, Jarvis, Carrier, Jankowski, and Robinson. Miller, Walker, Gosses, Nystrom, Slavin, Chatfield, Nikishin, Riley. These were the practice lines yesterday per Ryan Hinkle. So don't read too much into Nikishin and Riley being paired up the way that they are. I don't think Nikishin is going to be scratched. We'll find out here soon. But as Rod said with one of his Rage Beta more moments, he don't read too much into the lines in a situation like that. I don't see any reason why Nikishin would be scratched. I think he's played very well. He laid that huge hit on Adam Ernie. Defensively, he's been fine. He makes a mistake here and there, but with the type of player he is, him being a high-risk, high-reward offensive type of defenseman who's starting to find that confidence and really jump into that rush, that's going to happen a little bit more often than what it used to. Frederik Andersen will be getting the start tonight. No confirmation on if Slavin will play tomorrow as it stands right now. Last I saw, he is more than likely not playing. Noah Phillip, who I am going to talk about him for a minute here. I'm impressed with what I see. And that's not just me wanting Jankowski sent to China. That's like, I really like what I'm seeing with this guy. Great puck pursuit, good 200-foot game. Definitely like the puck pursuit especially is impressive in the offensive zone. He's initiating board battles on his terms and winning them on his terms. Defensively, like what I'm seeing, good in the dot. So far, so good for Noah Phillip. You don't have a really big sample size and everything like that. And another reason why I say not worry about Nikishin being scratched potentially, he's still working on power play 2 as of yesterday. If he was going to be scratched, he probably would not be working with either of the power play units. So I think that he'll be there. I know that we're all a little bit worried about that because of that one time that he got scratched kind of out of nowhere, but he was playing a little bit rough around that time. This time, I don't think that's the case. Now, going into Anaheim here, this was the last projected lineup I found for them. It will be completely different than this tonight because Troy Terry is day-to-day with an upper body injury. Now, here's what you do have to watch out here, even without Troy Terry. Should the Ducks go 11-7 tonight, or if they have a typical 12-6 configuration in their lines, Kreider has been a Hurricanes killer his entire career. So that's someone you got to watch out for. Cutter Gauthier is coming along really well. Mason McTavish, even though he's on the slower side, he's a very high hockey IQ type of power forward center. Very good playmaker, has a great shot, everything like that. Leo Carlson is really making his way up in this league. He's one of the up-and-coming young stars. He's going to be an excellent player. Harkins, Granlund, Killorn, very, very solid third line. You have a decent amount of secondary scoring and toughness in there. And then Johnson, Paling. We'll see how they shake out with the lines and everything like that. The defense, this is one of those times where I think Carolina, again, has a pretty big net positive when you're talking about the defense. Zellweger, Trouba, Lacombe, Gudas, Minchikov, and more. I think that'll be what their actual starting lineup is. I don't know if they're going to do 11-7 tonight. I have yet to see the Ducks lines. I don't think that we'll see them until warm-up. Lucas Dostal will be starting, and he's another one of those guys that very young, up and coming, has a very bright future. We're going to talk about him a lot because that's going to be what the Canes really have to focus on tonight to win this game, if you ask me, because there's a pretty big difference in shot differential totals and chance quality and everything like that between these two teams, as per usual with the Canes. But tonight, it's a pretty big gap. Skating speed. Anaheim, young, fast. Very young, very fast team. Once they figure stuff out, they're going to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference and one of the best teams in the Pacific Division, if you ask me. They've already made some marked improvements over last season. Anaheim probably would have made the playoffs last season had they been better during special teams play. 5-on-5, they were pretty good. They couldn't get the power play and the penalty kill figured out. Once they get those things figured out, Anaheim is going to be a much better team, and they've taken steps in that direction this season. So as far as speed bursts go, Carolina has a slight edge of 57 in the 22-mile-per-hour burst versus 53 for Anaheim. 20 to 22 mile per hour burst, bit of a difference there. Anaheim has an edge of 1,001 to 955, and in 18 to 20 mile per hour burst, Anaheim has a pretty big jump there in 4,557 versus 4,084 for the Hurricanes. Max speed about half a mile per hour difference there, a little bit more. Anaheim clocks out at 23.95 versus 23.38. Again, that can be contributed to how youthful Anaheim is. They're a pretty young team, especially in the forward group. And like I said, they're only going to get better. Tonight's one of those nights where Carolina really needs to tap into the experience and tap into the depth to be able to get it done. So, shots on goal. Again, big difference for Carolina as normal. But you'll notice when you look at the maps of where these two teams like to take the majority of their shots from, they're almost polar opposite. With Carolina, there's a lot of shots from outside the dots, in the high slot, and in the low slot area. With Anaheim, they shoot a lot from the perimeter. But they also still manage to, they have like a healthy mix, Anaheim does, of having medium danger type of shots from a little bit outside the circle and then still getting their fair share of shots right there in the slot. However, when you're talking about breaking it down by high danger, mid-range, and long range, Carolina has a pretty decisive advantage in all three. So this is one of those times where shot volume will favor Carolina in almost every part of their respective offensive zones. So we'll see what happens with that. There's all kinds of ways that Carolina could win this game, but one of the biggest things that I think they need to do is stick to their normal volume shooting and everything like that, but generate high-quality chances as much as you can against a goalie like Lucas Dostal. Now, where they're scoring from, all locations 143 to 141. 64 versus 72 for a high danger chances. So Anaheim has a little bit of an edge there at how quickly they can generate high danger chances, mid-range and long range. Carolina has a little bit of an advantage. Paniac, shut up. I will destroy you. Love you, buddy. But anyway, so a little bit of a decisive advantage there. If you can limit Anaheim's high danger chances, maybe outchance them in the high danger aspect of things. Carolina very well could potentially do that. They probably won't, but they could at least break even, I would say, tonight. Mid-range and long range, you got pretty big differences there. So we'll see how all that goes down. Goaltending matchup. Frederik Andersen versus Lucas Dostal. This would be a really good night for Freddie to rediscover his form, but the team in front of him has to play better than what they have. Freddie's last loss, I don't really put a whole lot of that on him. The team in front of him didn't play very well. They were allowing these really easy breakouts or really easy zone entries and really easy breakouts. And Pittsburgh basically owned the neutral zone in that game. And they were doing these strong side entries where they were stacking up three players on one side of the ice and able to come in nearly uncontested. And when you allow that over and over again, it's only a matter of time before the scoring starts. So we'll see if he can do a little bit better tonight, but the team in front of him does have to be better. They didn't do him any favors that night. So in 17 games played, Frederik Andersen is 5-10-2. That is unacceptable. He has to be better. The team in front of him has to be better, as I've already stated. 3.43 goals against average and an .867 save percentage. Tonight would be a good night to pump those numbers back up. Now, if you go against, now looking at Lucas Dostal here, 28 games played, 13 wins, 11 losses, 2 overtime losses, 3.22 goals against average, and a save percentage of .887. I don't entirely put that on him. Dostal is a good goalie. The defense in front of him, and I'm not just talking about the defensemen, but collectively, Anaheim does not defend that well, and that's where Carolina can really take advantage of that with their ability to establish the offensive zone. Now, when you look at the save percentages here for both these goalies, pretty close. As far as all locations go, high danger, pretty close. Mid-range is where you kind of have a little bit of a gap with 824 to 914. Long range, 970 to 956, which is where Freddie has a little bit of an advantage. I don't expect this to be a goaltender's duel tonight. I expect this to be, this is one of those games that can be a high-scoring affair and Carolina can still win. Not primarily because of Dostal, but primarily because of Carolina is able to establish the offensive zone, generate a ton of high danger shots, medium danger shots, and low danger shots. And Dostal is going to be busy doing that. As far as what goes on at the other end of the ice in their defensive zone, Carolina's got to clean up what Anaheim does manage to generate, even if you keep them on the perimeter, they're still going to shoot the puck. That's where Freddie has to come in, and that's where having quick, clean zone exits has to come in to help him out. It's a group effort to help get Freddie back on track. Goals against. Freddie has a pretty decent edge here, but we also have to consider, excuse me, 1 second. We also have to consider that Dostal's played 28 games, whereas Freddie's only played 17, 58 to 84 for all locations. Freddie's only given up 31 high-danger shots, but Carolina doesn't allow a ton of high-danger chances. Teams really have to work for what they get against them. Mid-range, they're almost dead even, 21 to 20. Long range, 2 to 6. So Dostal is not giving up a ton. That being said, you pepper him with enough shots, I think Carolina comes away with the W regardless of where they come from based on all the maps and everything that we've seen thus far. Now, we're going to talk about this a lot. I made a special slide for this line. Now, one of the reasons I want to talk about this line so much, this is not the first time Carolina has attempted to create a line like this. This is just the first time they've done it with these players, and it has worked. 5-on-5. This is just 5-on-5 we're talking about here. Carolina is +4 goal differential. 6-4, 2 against. Expected goals plus 1.09 with 3.35 to 2.26. They are scoring well above expected with this line. High danger chances, Carolina has generated 15 and given up 10 for a +5 in high danger chances. The goals for percentage in each of these games, these 4 games in a row that this line has been together, either clocks out at 66.6, I'm not saying the other number, or 100%. That is excellent. Expected goals for ranges from 55.26 to 73.55, and they're scoring above expected even then. Excellent. Average time on ice, 5-on-5, mind you, only for this line, 9:58. Sebastian Aho has 1 goal, 3 assists in that time. Andrei Svechnikov has 2 goals and 3 assists in that time. And Nikolai Ehlers has 1 goal and 3 assists in that time frame. Now, one of the reasons I'm going to talk about this a lot, there's been times they've tried to make this work before where they've had Aho with Necas. Ehlers and Necas have a lot of similarities in their skill set. Just the difference is Ehlers is a little bit more, well, one, he's a little bit better defensively, or he's a lot better defensively, honestly, than Necas was when he was in Carolina. He can play the other side of the puck. He can play the defensive game. He knows how to pick up the right man coming back on the back check. He's a very aggressive forechecker, but he also does all those things with a high hockey IQ. When he has possession of the puck, Nikolai Ehlers kind of dictates those zone entries on his terms. And his off-puck routes in the offensive zone are really good as well. So what I mean by all that is, and then additionally, this allows Andrei Svechnikov to be on the right wing, which I'm going to talk about that, but we're going to stick with Ehlers for a moment. So Ehlers, when he's generating these entries, he always enters at an angle. He never cuts 90 degrees right to the middle. He doesn't try to enter in unfavorable situations and go 1-on-4 in a lot of situations where Necas would in Carolina. Aho and Ehlers are better at staying parallel with each other on entry than Aho and Necas ever were, regardless of what side of the ice either one of them were on during that particular entry. Ehlers has one other thing in his toolkit that Necas doesn't have a ton of on those entries, and that's patience. He knows when to be going 90 miles an hour, hit the brakes for a second, and kind of let some white space open up so that he can make a play. And typically, Aho or Svechnikov is right there with him. If it's not one of them, one of the defensemen has been good about jumping up when that line has been on the ice. So when you combine Ehlers' high intellect play on those zone entries, you're creating these really, really good chances. The difference was with Aho and Necas. Necas would get too fast for Aho at times, and Necas didn't have that ability to really kind of slow up a little bit and create that entry and stay parallel with Aho on entry before dishing the puck off. Ehlers and Aho do not have that problem. Additionally, Ehlers, like I said before, being on the left, allows for Sebastian Aho to feed off of Ehlers playing his natural position. Then going into further natural positions, Andrei Svechnikov on the right wing is a monster. This is not the first time we've seen that. So Andrei Svechnikov was drafted to be an offside wing. That's what he played in Barrie. That's probably what he played the entire time he was growing up, I would imagine. And now he's finally back in that element. It's not the first time he's done it in Carolina. One of the best lines Carolina has ever had has been Teravainen, Aho, and Svechnikov, with Svechnikov on the right. But it is noticeably different how much more comfortable Andrei Svechnikov is playing on the right side of the ice. And that is one of those things where if you try to play him anywhere else, it's a large square peg trying to be fit into a small round hole. It just does not work as well. So if you have Svechnikov on that side of the ice, that's more high danger shots that he's getting. He generates plays just fine from that side of the ice, as we saw with Keandre Miller's goal in the last game, which really kickstarted things for the Hurricanes in that game. He can make those types of plays, make those types of passes, but still have that shoot first mentality from where he's coming from. And he can really be a power forward and protect the puck better on that side of the ice. Sebastian Aho, nothing has changed except for the fact that he's got the right guys around him now to be able to be the play driver and the safety valve defensively for them on that line. His off-puck routes, not much different than they ever are with anyone else. He hasn't really had to change anything about his game. Svechnikov has been able to reinvent his game as a power forward and focus a little bit more on the puck protection as opposed to the power moves. And that has paid dividends for the Canes in many, many different ways. But out of all three of these guys, the one who has had to change his game the least is Sebastian Aho. And that's a good thing for him because now he's got one guy that generates the entries for him, helps him out extensively with the defensive side of things with Ehlers, that lets him be the play driver, that lets him own the middle of the ice, that lets him go to the front of the net, that lets him pick his off puck routes. Same thing for Andrei Svechnikov, except Svechnikov is your shooter on that line more often than not. And even when he doesn't score, he's generating really good chances off of rebounds, and he's able to make those plays on the backhand as far as dishing those pucks from the other side of the ice, or if he wants to pull it to the forehand and then do it, that's one more split second it takes, but he's a skilled enough player to be able to take that extra split second to make those plays. So, two things to compare this to. One, Aho playing with Necas and Svechnikov never worked out entirely because of the disconnect I mentioned before between Aho and Necas, and Svechnikov playing his unnatural position on the left wing. Hopefully that never happens again. Then you account for the fact that now you have Ehlers, who is a natural left wing playing that position, who did so in a lot of, who Teravainen did that as well, where he played on that left side and helped to set up those plays for Aho and Svechnikov and also be that additional guy that's pulling the weight defensively. Now you have Ehlers doing that, and he does it with a little bit more speed, which is exactly what this line needs. So nearly 10 minutes a night at 5-on-5, which typically, you play about 8 to 10 minutes, not at 5-on-5, depending on how many penalties are called on either side. So that leaves about 50 minutes of the game. 1/5 of that right now is being played by this line, and they have managed to produce 6 goals in that time. In that roughly 40 minutes that they have played together, they have scored 2 and only given up 2 at 5-on-5. This is excellent. This line has to stay together until it stops working. And when I say stops working, I mean you are out of options before you have to break it up. Do not break this lineup to cannibalize the rest of the lineup. You've got Jarvis back now. It's okay to have him with Martinook and Stahl for the time being. But eventually you're going to get to a point after a trade, hopefully, where you can build a legitimately lethal top 6 and not cannibalize the other lines. Now, what I mean by that, let me go back to the lines that Ryan Hinkle had posted. And I talked about this on X. I kind of wish I'd clipped it and thrown it in here, but I remember what I said. Ehlers, Aho, Svechnikov, don't break that up. Hall, Stankoven, and Blake, that line's pretty good. If you want to keep it intact, you're 2 trades away from being able to do that. Go grab someone like, say, Robert Thomas. Unlikely, but we'll use him as a placeholder. Go grab a rental like Kiefer Sherwood, who's a left winger. Then you make a line of Sherwood, Thomas, and Jarvis. And that line slots in between Ehlers, Aho, and Svechnikov, and Hall, Stankoven, Blake. And then you have Martinook, Stahl, Carrier to round out that lineup. That is your best chance for this team to win a Stanley Cup without having someone named Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon playing for you. At that point, as top-heavy as your top 6 is, the depth would still be very, very well distributed. Do not change any of those things if you don't have to. And there is no reason right now why those things would have to be changed. If Rod wants to go to the line blender, if things aren't going well at any point, be it tonight or in the future, that top line should be blender immune. Do not change that line. They have been trying to find a configuration like this for years, that was consistent and could stay this way since Teravainen and Aho and Svechnikov was no longer a thing. This is that chance. This is that opportunity. Everything below them should be built around that line. If they do that, the Canes are going to be in really, really good shape going forward. It has been a long time since they've had a line that looked that good. Now, are they going to maintain these stellar numbers? Probably not. Are they still going to be really good? I think so. So that's what I would do. That way you legitimately at that point have one scoring line, one shutdown line, 3 really good scoring lines, 2 that are kind of top heavy. You don't have a superstar. You don't need one at that point. If you make that happen, if you get a 2C and if you get a 2LW and you put Seth Jarvis there and you're putting Seth Jarvis there as a luxury, not a necessity, this team is Stanley Cup Finals bound potentially if it can do that. That's the funny thing about where this team is at right now. They are a couple of transactions away from being paper dragon to actual legitimate, honest to God cup contender. So do not change this. Whatever you do, do not change that top line. Build around that top line. And then at that point, you have a legitimate discussion to be had about whether this team can actually make it to the end. Right now, I don't believe it can. In this current configuration, it would need a lot of bracket luck and everything would have to go perfectly. You don't want to build a team where you have to try and account for a bunch of factors that are out of your control. You want to build a team that you look at and say, okay, these guys can get it done. Additionally, if you make trades like that and build the type of lineup I'm talking about, then you can rotate guys in and out of the lineup as the season goes on and get some rest, injury mitigation, all that type of stuff. So if you want to have Ehlers sit for a game to rest or to nurse an injury, you throw Robinson up there. If you want to have Jarvis sit for a game, you throw Hall in there, something like that. There are a lot of different things you can do to make this work. There's a lot of different things you can do to make this work. Additionally, this gives you the option to put Stankoven back on the wing, depending on who you were to go get. If you put Stankoven back on the wing, he's played well the last couple of games at center, especially against Dallas. He was excellent. Is it sustainable, though, is a question that remains to be definitively answered. So that's all I have to say about that. And as I stated before, I liked what I've seen out of Noah Phillip. I want him to be consistently in the lineup over Jankowski because he's got the snarl, he's got the toughness, he's got the 200-foot game, he's got the speed to do the things that Jankowski does not do. Now, that's not to say that Jankowski is not an effective hockey player. He is. I know I rag on him a lot. But right now, when you're talking about players that fill needs versus players that are redundant, Noah Phillip fills a need. Mark Jankowski is redundant. So as soon as you can get him back in the lineup, that'd be a good thing to do there. However, Jankowski does give you that 13th forward flexibility to where, as I was stating before, you can rotate players in and out. So my name is Brandon. That is the end of my TED Talk. I will now get to the comments. All right, let me get back up here. Lackey, what's up, buddy? Pull. I am always pulling. Carry out will probably end up being a huge loss for Anaheim. Yes, that's one of those young, fast players that they have, and that's kind of their identity as a team. So, yeah, that's going to be a big loss for them. No Slavin, so Nikishin definitely not sitting. Yeah, and I don't see any reason to sit Nikishin in the first place, honestly. I think he's been good lately. Ethan says, when Phillip went straight after the Devils bumped Bussy, that told me that Jankowski should ride the pine for this guy. I agree. I mean, that's not the first time I thought that Jankowski shouldn't be in the lineup over a certain other center that will not be named because, you know, it's like, here's when it comes to the certain other center that will not be named. I am fucking exhausted with that discussion. To the point where if you follow me on X, you saw that I added his name and abbreviations of his name to my muted words list right there with Swift, Kelty, Israel, Palestine, and Hamas. Because I don't want to see any of that stuff on my timeline. I actually feel that same way about it. I don't want to hear about terrorism, and I don't want to hear about that guy. Because that discussion has gone so far in the wrong direction both ways. What I mean by that, There is a sect of people, and I know I'm a noted defender of that player, but there are certain people that have gone so far as to say Rod should be fired for not putting Kotkaniemi in the lineup, and that is just no. You don't go changing the coach because he doesn't get along with one player. There is absolutely no way that someone coaches a hockey team for 8 seasons and does not eventually develop some sort of disconnect or personality conflict or whatever of a particular player who happens to be on a contract that's hard to move. So that was an inevitability. It's a happenstance thing that was going to happen at some point or another. That being said, the other side of the aisle in that, whereas it looks, I've got the moderate position on this at this point. That's how bad it's gotten. Is absolutely underselling how good of a player he is that just doesn't fit here. Natchez, for example, great player, just didn't fit. If you ask me, he has more God-given talent than anybody the Hurricanes ever drafted. He just ended up not working out with the way that he needed to play. So there's all that. So at this point, I am ready to jettison that player, cut your losses and bug out. Be done with it. If you end up having to put him through waivers to get him out, do it. If you end up having to just take a 4th or a 5th round pick or something like that to get rid of him, do it. It's doing nothing but causing problems for anybody. Get him the hell out of here and be done with it. And then let's see what happens moving forward for him wherever else he goes and whatever happens for the Hurricanes. I am doing one last video project and one last really long post about him. That is it. And then as far as, but otherwise, I've exited that discussion because it's gotten to where there's no substance to that discussion at this point. There hasn't been for a long time, but the way it was getting the other day, I was like, you know what, I'm done. I've got better things to do with my time than sit here and be middle right, center right, I guess you could say, of a feedback loop surrounding that player. There are people who are bitching about him that don't even know that he hasn't played every game this season. Additionally, there are people thinking that you should fire the most important person in the franchise just for not having him in the lineup. And I don't agree with that decision, for the record, of him not being in the lineup. But you can't upset the entire balance of things and tear everything down just because of that. Especially not when things are finally going well. So, me personally, I have exited that discussion. I will not be returning into it until such time as there's a relevant reason to return to it, i.e. he is traded or waived. It's exhausting, and I'm done with it. I have defended him in every way possible. I have defended him and Rod almost equally, if you ask me. But there is no one that at this point that is going to change their mind or even have a meaningful discussion about the player. Because in one corner, you have people who will defend every decision that Rod makes. And then in the other corner, now you have people who want the coach gone because he's not in the lineup. There is no point in talking anymore if those are going to be the two ends of the spectrum of the discussion. Get him the fuck out of here. For everybody involved, including my sanity as a content creator and adamant defender of them both. Especially the center who will not be named that is not a coach. Get him the fuck out of here and be done with it. I'm over it. I've never been so over a discussion as I have that one. That's why I've just exited it. I don't care anymore. Things have ran its course. Who you want to blame for that is up to you. But it needs to be done. Sup, Matthew, how you doing? Daniel, sup? Good to see you, buddy. We need to do our prospects update show soon. Yes, we will do that soon now that I've got some time on my hands. Glad we got to meet on New Year's. Glad Bussy bounced back because he couldn't stop a beach ball. LOL, I was pissed when he allowed that 6th one. Yeah, the defense was atrocious that night. Wasted a damn 5-point game from Sebastian Aho. Like, you'll never guess who the last Hurricanes player to have a 5-point game was. You'll never guess. He's also Finnish. And he also has a 2 on his sweater. Aho didn't deserve the loss in that one, no. Paniac, fuck you, Paniac. Lackey fan says 31 had a beautiful 40 minutes in the Colorado game and then the team collapsed in front of him. Yeah, that too. Yeah. That in the Pittsburgh game, I can't put entirely on him. I got to put that on the team in front of him. Yeah, he didn't deserve that, no. Raleigh98, what's up, buddy? Hope Stank can keep the scoring up. He's been using his legs more in the last couple of games, also less soft plays. I agree. Ehlers is what Rod wanted Natchez to be. He is that. He really is. Sound the Siren reposted and said, leave him at right wing, referring to Andrei Svechnikov. I could not agree more. Dylan says, do you think Turbo might come back, but the Hawks ain't doing bad, so that won't happen? I don't want to bring him back. I think that I know I made my little prediction a few years ago when he signed in Chicago. It's been a couple of years now that it was an inevitability that he was coming back. I could see Carolina just grabbing him at the deadline. If you get another center and you grab Teravainen to be that second line left wing and help build the second power play around him, I could see that. The thing is, I don't think the Canes need any more undersized defense first playmakers. I would rather them go in a different direction, but if you could bring him back, maybe, but he's definitely not on my list, not near the top anyway. Not the worst idea, but I personally don't see that happening at this point. Next season, that could be different because, like I said, if you go out and get Sherwood strictly needs to be a rental. Strictly a rental. It's going to take a haul to get Thomas. Yeah, it's going to take, yeah. And he has to waive his no-trade clause. Our trade stop at 2C, or we bring in another winger also. Do both if you can. Do both if you can and build an actual legitimate lethal top six. Oh no, Anderson in the crease, I guess an automatic loss. And I'm not giving up on him just yet. Wonder if we dump our blue line to Los Angeles for Byfield. Byfield's a player I don't know a ton about. I need to watch him some more. I could see something like that happening. We'll see. Philip has been great. Yes, I agree. And X keeps auto-correcting his name every time I try and type it because I know that there's not a second I in there, and it keeps putting it in there anyway, so I just gave up and just threw it in there. People making personal with Rod and him, I think it's just hockey, but he's a blunt coach, so his comments come off as harsh and personal. Yeah, and I think part of the reason why I have an issue with it is, aside from penalty killing, and he was really good in the playoffs too, Brent Burns got away with murder last season with Jacob Slavin to his left. And anytime the media remotely pressed Rod about Burns, he vehemently defended him. And there were times where it was completely unjustifiable to do so, and he did so because he likes the player. And I liked Burnsy too. I still like him. I wish him the best in Colorado. But the thing about it is, it just, that gives the perception, whether it's true or not, that Rod doesn't hold his standards across the board. And I am a firm believer that he who shall not be mentioned was on a shorter leash since the players only meeting in 23-24 than everyone else. It felt like anybody else messed up. It was not good, but it was a little bit more tolerated than when he made mistakes and he was immediately down the depth chart. And it's like there's some degree of truth to the joke that Burns turns the puck over and he, who shall not be mentioned, was demoted down the lines. And then Burns turns the puck over playing for another team, and the next game, that player is scratched. You can't make this stuff up. It was just a joke, but I knew it was going to come to fruition, and that's why I posted what I posted. Same with Drury. He's better with the Avs than he was here. Yeah, because he was redundant here. He was really he was redundant in Carolina, and there were times where he either wasn't playing enough of a role or he was playing more of a role than he should have been. Not like I didn't dislike Drury. He just wasn't one of my favorites personally. Again, wish him all the best, but I was not a big fan of him. Said player is still eligible for buyout as long as he's under 26. Yeah, buyout's another option. I don't know if they'll go that route because Dundon hates dead money. You might as well at least get a mid-round pick for him and everything. Damon says, I need to figure out how you did that. I'm tired of seeing it myself. Yeah, if you go into your settings on X, type in mute, and it'll take you to muted words, muted accounts, and all that type of stuff. Go into muted words, and I added everything in there that I could think of that would keep me from seeing his name, which also keeps me from seeing the line sometimes, but I get those from game day tweets anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And people share them in the chats I'm in and everything like that. 100% he has been. Dylan Bollinger looked fantastic against us last game. Ethan says, I hope to put Stank on the stall line. I love Carrier, but I feel like that line does everything to the good but score. Balancing the group makes the team more lethal. Yes, that's definitely one option you could there. What do you think about the Colton him thing that Katie mentioned? I've read a little bit of what she wrote about it. I've glanced at it, I should say. But at that point, the only thing that would stop me from making that deal is the potential of making a better deal that fills a bigger need and brings in a better player or two. That's the only reason why I'm kind of like about that. Colton's a better skater than he is. So that's one way that it could be done. I think it's fair to say Rod has favoritism to veterans. I'm a firm believer of that. If people ask what's the best thing 8-2 can do to get himself back in the lineup, he needs to hurry up and turn 30. That's his best chance. How would you feel about Ryan O'Reilly and Jake DeBrusk's ads? I love the idea of Robert Thomas, but those teams won't move their big guns. I'm not big on assets for older players, but Ryan O'Reilly could bridge the gap for something better. DeBrusk adds some offense, but is also a bit of a sandpaper pest. Yeah, so when it comes to Ryan O'Reilly, I don't know if Nashville is going to be willing to move him, considering that they were playing well last that I looked. I think we have to get closer to the deadline to be able to kind of have that determination about things. As far as how he would fit on the team, I think he would be an excellent fit. He's got a ton of playoff experience. He's very good defensively. He's won a Conn Smythe. I would say that he would definitely be a good ad. Another left-handed center, but, not really worried about that. Slavin is our goat, says I'm extremely close to muting Jack and Quinn Hughes. Yeah, I mean, Luke muted their whole team the other night. I can't think of any 2C available that would be realistic at this moment. Right now, there's really not. And it's just you're kind of stuck with what you got right now. That's not going to change until the deadline with how tightly packed the standings are. All right, everybody. So that is going to be it for me. I do plan on doing damage report after the game. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. And then I will probably stream again on Saturday prior to and after the game against the Kraken. Our old friend John Forsland will be back in town. And I will be watching the other broadcast that night for obvious reasons, because that's my favorite commentator, favorite person in hockey media overall. Sound the Siren says we've spoken to Spirios at an AHL level. Lots of young talent that could get squashed so they can be packaged. It's tricky, but Fuss trick is off Suzuki. Not going to taste the NHL here. Yeah, there's no way up for those guys. I mean, Nadeau doesn't even have a clear path up, and he's pretty close to being ready if he's not ready now, depending on who you ask. Byfield or Fogle, maybe. Dude, I loved Warren Fogle. Oh my God, him mutilating the Caps in the playoffs the way that he did. Its only problem is Fogle's a bottom six guy. Like, he wouldn't be the worst one to bring back. I don't know what Svechnikov started doing different, but keep doing it. He's playing right wing. That's what's different. He's playing his natural position. That's what's different. Go on Money Puck or Natural Stat Trick and look at his heat maps. Completely different player on the right side of the ice. Night and day. I keep coming back to LA. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me. I will see you after the game. And remember, pull, focus, believe. Jankowski to China. Keep Svechnikov on the right wing, and above all, Jankowski to China. Okay, we got a few more. I'll do a couple more. BG, what's up? I just want to say, hey, brother, hyped to actually sit and watch a game tonight. Awesome. Good to see you, buddy. Fogle was a monster in the playoffs for absolutely no reason. In a 2C trade, do you prefer moving Serrato, Nadeau, any others? I would not give up either of those guys if possible. The closest thing this team has to a clear cut second line center, or the clearest path they have to one, is Charlie Serrato right now. So, all right, now I'm going to get out of here. Y'all have a good night. I will see you soon. Jankowski to China.